cuties, I'm back. And today we are doing Christmas nails and princess. If you're new here, welcome to my channel and welcome to the Cute Life. I'm your cult leader, Leah. Today, I'm excited because it's Christmas and that means Christmas nails. And I have not had on my nail extensions for a very long time and I want them back. And I'm gonna do some Christmassy stuff. See my tree? Christmas. And we're also going to be summarizing and discussing the latest book I've read, which is what I do while I do my nails because basically it makes it more entertaining for me. I feel like I've been doing a lot of very deep, heavy books lately. So since it's Christmas, I wanted something a little bit lighter this time, something just a little funner. So, of course, who do I turn to when I just want to be dreamy and fun? Disney and their Twisted Tales series. This one is based on Snow White, the very first Disney princess and the very first Disney villain, the evil queen. This book is called Mirror, Mirror, and it's by Calonita. Hope I pronounced that right. So let's get started. I hope I remember how to do nails. I haven't done any in so long, but we're gonna do, the design I wanna do is a little bit simple. This Christmas we're having family portraits done and we're all wearing red and black lumberjack style tops. So I'm just gonna do some red, black, and white. Okay, and per usual, to get started, I'm just going to push back my cuticles. All right, so mirror, mirror, a twisted tale, take on Snow White. So the story starts with Snow White and her friend Anne outside the palace walls, looking up at the castle. Snow White is remembering what it was like to live there with her parents, King George and Queen Catherine. And then also, it was what it was like to live there after they died. It wasn't until then that she realized the truth. The only one who could truly break her free was herself. She was back to claim what was truly hers. Not just the castle, but the whole kingdom. Queen Ingrid had never been popular, but in the last few years, her reign had been downright terror. As they walked up the dirt road that led to the castle, a declaration was nailed to a post. It read, "Queen Ingrid demands all loyal subjects join her for a celebration in the castle courtyard today at noon. In preparation for this momentous occasion, all village establishments will be closed. All not at the celebration will be noted." As they got closer, a man came running out screaming, "The queen is a witch! Run, hide, or Queen Ingrid will curse you too." Snow had a bad feeling about this. Her gut told her something was seriously wrong, and she needed to know what had happened. They got to the gates of the castle, and all the villagers were crowded around. Snow and Anne couldn't see over their heads, so they pushed their way through the crowd till they get to the gates. All the villagers are murmuring amongst themselves that it is witchcraft and a warning that she is not to be crossed. When Snow gets to the gates, she sees what everyone is looking at. She sees Henry. His eyes are closed. He is on a display in a glass coffin on a raised platform. In his hands is a single white rose. It was a message to her that was very clear. Snow pushed on the gates till she is able to slip through, not caring about the guards. The people start yelling, "It's the princess! She's back for us!" She approaches Henry. She opens the case. She yells his name, but his eyes do not open. But his hands are still warm. Then the guards rip her from him. The head guard orders the others to take her to Queen Ingrid. Snow White is 7, and she's with her mother in the gardens, playing hide and seek. As they play, they hear a voice say, "You shouldn't be here, Your Majesty." It was Snow's mother's sister and lady-in-waiting, her Aunt Ingrid. She is staring at them shortly, almost angrily. Snow knew this look well. "You're late," she says to the queen. Now, back to the present time of the story. Snow, now 17, sits up in bed sharply crying out, "Mother!" She had had a nightmare. She needs to shake it off and get up, though. She has a lot to do that day. She had taken it upon herself to keep the castle up. Her aunt had forbidden her from leaving the castle grounds. She said it was for Snow's safety, but it still made her feel like a prisoner. At least she can still come and go in the gardens as she pleased. She keeps busy with the castle, so she won't think too much about everything she has lost over the past 10 years. Her mother had fallen ill quickly and died. Her father had been too distraught to comfort her, and instead turned to Ingrid, and they were soon married. Snow sensed that it was out of necessity and not love. She assumed her father had wanted her to have a mother, and Ingrid had appeared to be the next best thing. But she wasn't. Snow's father was never the same once her mother died. Perhaps that's the true reason her father had run off. A few months later, Ingrid had said that he had lost his mind. Her last memory of him was in her mother's aviary. He told Snow she reminded him so much of her mother, and that he was sorry she wasn't there to see her grow up. His words made her sad because they felt like a goodbye. The next morning, he was gone. Then the queen dismissed all of her father's court and appointed a very small group of advisors that she had handpicked. Snow would hear whispers about her aunt's new nickname, the Evil Queen, that her subjects called her when she was not around. The queen kept little staff. She did keep around a personal tailor, Marguerite. She certainly did not hire anyone to care for Snow. Snow had raised herself. Snow went out into the hallway and heard Brutus, the head guardsman, reprimanding another guard. He was saying, "You know what happened to the boy in your position before you, do you not? He was never seen again. Some say he was turned into one of the snakes that slither through the grass on the grounds." Snow had heard others talking about how her aunt practiced witchcraft. It was how she stayed looking so young. It was also why no one questioned her decisions, because they were afraid of being turned into a toad or worse. They talked about a chamber where the queen spent most of her time talking to someone, though no one ever saw anyone coming or going from her room. Snow gathered her cleaning supplies and goes about her duties. As she is heading down the hall, she hears footsteps. She instinctively moves into the shadows to stay unseen. It was the queen's seamstress, Marguerite, as well as her apprentice, her daughter, who was about the same age as Snow. Snow had overheard them talking and knew the daughter's name was Anne. But they had never spoken. "I told you, I don't know why we were summoned," Marguerite was saying to her daughter while carrying a bunch of fabric and sewing materials. "I'm sure it's nothing to worry about." "What if she changed her mind again?" Anne prodded. "We can't afford to throw out any more fabric, Mother. The queen won't let us sell the discarded gowns to anyone, and she won't let us keep them. One day she wants purple, the next black, the following blue. The evil queen can't decide." "Don't you dare call her that," her mother said to her. "Don't you know how fortunate we are to have these jobs?" "I'm sorry, Mother," Anne said. It pained Snow to hear the subjects talk like this. She was forbidden to spend time outside the castle, so she didn't know for sure, but she sensed that most of the people were struggling. Snow watched them both continue down the hall and waited till they turned into the Queen's corridor before she stepped back out into the light again. She grabbed her cleaning supplies and disappeared before Anne and her mother could return. Snow washed the steps that led up to the main entrance of the castle. She then went to the well to get a fresh bucket of water. She remembered her mother telling her it was a magic wishing well. She thought about making a wish, but what would she wish for? She had accepted her mundane life and made the best of it. But she couldn't help wishing there was someone to share her days with. She wished for love. She began to sing a song that her mother would sing to her father. She was so caught up in the music, she didn't notice the boy till he was right in front of her, seeming to appear from thin air. He startled her. She ran for safety of the castle. Has this intruder come for her, as Ingrid had always warned? There is a mark on a princess's head. Mark my words, she would say whenever young Snow asked why she couldn't leave the castle grounds. She ran up the steps to the first landing and went to the nearest balcony and cautiously looked out. He called after her, asking her to wait. He didn't mean to frighten her. She peered out from behind the curtains and asked him where he was from. He told her that his kingdom borders hers in the north. I am Henrich, but my friends call me Henry. I am Snow White, she says. He told her he was there to see the Queen, although he didn't have an appointment. Snow told him that she doesn't like being called on unannounced. He said it was important that he talk to her. His father, the king, asked him to, and he didn't want to let him down. Snow asked him what for. He told her, your kingdom is known for its diamonds, and ours is known for raising sheep. We've always had a robust trade between the two kingdoms that we both benefit from. But the past few years, the Queen has taxed us heavily when we want to buy crops and keeps cutting our profits on wool. Recently, she stopped taking orders. We've heard she started to look elsewhere for trade. I wanted to appeal to her to keep the original agreement we had with King George. I'm not sure she's going to honor that agreement, especially if you bring up the former king, Snow told him. Then she tells him, I should go, and you should too, I'm afraid. Henry says, yes, perhaps I will try to make an appointment with the Queen. Snow watched as Henry climbed back over the castle outer wall. He then turned and said, till we meet again? She repeated, till we meet again, and she hoped it was soon. Snow was so busy watching Henry, she didn't notice she was being watched. High above, the evil Queen looked down from her window. The Queen watched with disgust. How many times has she told her not to converse with anyone, especially strangers? Who was that boy, and what was he doing on the castle grounds without her knowledge? It wasn't just his intrusion that angered her. It was something else. She couldn't put her finger on it. She whirled away from the window and moved toward her wardrobe. She pressed a lever on the wall. It opened a secret doorway that led to a chamber. There was a platform at its center and blue curtains that hid her most prized possession. She threw open the curtains, and there it was, an object of beauty. It was oval and took up almost the entire wall. Its frame was made of ebony. Ever since she was a young girl, she had craved a type of beauty and wealth that she had not been born into, and she never tired of hearing that she had finally achieved it. She said the familiar words. It was as beautiful as the day she had found it hidden in her master's shop. The mirror had never told her how it came into being, but she knew every part of it was vital and irreplaceable. She closed her eyes, raised her arms, and thunder and wind consumed the room as she spoke. Voice in the magic mirror, come from the farthest of space, through wind and darkness, speak, let me see thy face. Then a mask appeared in the mirror. Ingrid knew every line in his face, just like her own. The lines had disappeared over time, thanks to the mirror's magic. She looked as young and vibrant as snow on most days, and definitely dressed better. What is thy bidding, my queen? Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all? She waited for the familiar answer. Famed is thy beauty, majesty. Behold, a lovely maid I see. Rags cannot hide her gentle grace. Alas, she is more fair than thee. Ingrid demanded he reveal her name. Lips red as the rose, hair black as ebony, skin white as snow. She didn't need the mirror to finish. It was snow white. The mirror continued. The future holds more than one outcome. If your will is to pass, you alone know what must be done. She understood where the mirror was going with this. They've had this discussion before, but it was one the mirror kept circling back to, just as it had all those years ago. No one knew about the mirror. Catherine had found out about the mirror and its power. Ingrid knew that snow diminished her authority over the people. Even hidden away in her ivory tower, they seemed to know she was there. Snow was sure they wished Snow would do something to get rid of their evil queen. But Ingrid didn't think Snow had the strength or the power. Power does she lack, the mirror agreed. Yet strength is another matter. If given a chance, she will take the throne back. The evil queen immediately had her guard summon the huntsman. She tells the huntsman, I would like you to take her out in the forest, somewhere where she can pick wildflowers. And then she says, and there, my faithful huntsman, you will kill her. The huntsman's like, but your majesty, she's the princess. Queen says, you know the penalty if you fail. And he says, yes, your majesty. Then she has a thought that he could double cross her and just lie. So she says, but to make doubly sure you do not fail, bring back her heart in this. And she gives him a box that appropriately had a heart with a sword through it. Ingrid and her younger sister, Catherine, are sitting on the floor in their small cottage. Ingrid had made them some dolls. Catherine was very excited. Their father had no head for girls. He left them to fend for themselves most days while he worked in the village. But that was fine with the girls because they didn't much like him around. Their mother had died of an illness a few years earlier. Their father had stopped their schooling when their mother died. Your place is to keep house, he had told them, to cook and clean and serve him when he got home. But most days he didn't come home till very late, so that was perfectly fine with them. So when they heard the door thunder open while the sun was still high, both girls jumped. Their father had come home early. He had gotten dismissed from work and docked a day's pay for showing up drunk. Toys? You're playing with toys, he said. You should be working instead of me. He grabbed their dolls from them and threw them in the fire. Girls could tell he was about to be one of those nights where he took his frustrations out on them. Their father grabbed Catherine by the hair, and this just sent Ingrid into a rage. She started hitting on him and trying to tell him to leave Catherine alone. She ended up going to the fireplace and grabbing one of those fireplace poker things and hit him over the head with it. Then she grabbed Catherine by the hand and just ran out of there. She wasn't gonna stick around for him to wake up and see what he thought of the situation. As they were running through the forest, Catherine started crying and she was like, what are we doing? Where are we going? But Ingrid didn't know. She needed to get as far away from that cottage as she could get them. Ingrid told Catherine it didn't matter where they were going as long as they were together, which is what their mother had told Ingrid on her deathbed. So they walked along the road and soon a farmer came up in his horse and cart. So Ingrid grabbed Catherine by the hand and ran up to him and said, "Please, sir," she's like, "do you have any need for workers?" She's like, "We work hard and we're orphans and, we'll work really hard just for food and board." And he was like, he didn't say anything. He just motioned to the back. So now back to the current timeline. Snow wakes up to someone shaking her and saying, "Get up, Your Highness, get up." It was the woman who washed the queen's clothes. Her name was Amelia. She tells Snow that her aunt had arranged a little outing for her to, get her out of the castle. And she even had a gown brought for her to make it, a nice little day for Snow. You would think Snow would be like, but she was excited. Her aunt had wanted her to leave early before it got too hot. After she ate a little something, the maid took her to her escort where he was waiting with the carriage. He drove them out of the village, down the mountain, and to a meadow. There, the carriage came to a stop, and the huntsman came around and opened the door. "We're here, Your Highness," he said. "Thank you," she said, and got out of the carriage, and immediately began picking flowers. "We'll head that way," the huntsman said, pointing to the dark woods beyond the meadows. As she was picking flowers, she felt a shadow come over her, and she looked up and surprised to see the huntsman standing over her with a knife. Her blood ran cold as she realized she was backed up against a boulder with nowhere to run. She knew what was about to happen, so holding her breath, she just put her arms over her face and waited. But then she heard the knife clang to the ground. She moved her hands away from her face and saw the huntsman down on his knees crying, saying, "I can't do it, Your Highness. I can't do it." He said, "Forgive me, Your Highness. Forgive me. She's mad, jealous of you. She'll stop at nothing." And Snow White was like, "But who? Who wants to kill me?" And the huntsman looked at her like, Do you really need to ask that? He's like, "The queen." Catherine and Ingrid are getting ready to go into town. Catherine and Ingrid are living with the farmer and his wife, and they're helping them in the apple orchards that they own. And Catherine has, taken quite an interest in the farming of apples world. The farmer and his wife really like Catherine. You can tell she's kind of their favorite. So in just a few years of them helping the farmer and his wife, their orchards were doing much better than they had before. Catherine was really taking to the life, and she was actually creating hybrid apples that she had invented herself that she called Red Fire. And they were super popular, and there was even a rumor that the king himself had requested them for his breakfasts. So once a week, Ingrid and Catherine would go into town to sell the apples. At the marketplace, there would be a line for Catherine's apples. And on this day, there were people lined up even before they got there. Ingrid hated the farm life, but she didn't mind market day. At least she could get away from the farm, do a little shopping. On this day, she came across a vendor selling mirrors and trunks and kind of odd goods. As she was looking at his stuff, he came up to her and was like, "Would you like me to grant you a wish?" And she's like, "I'm sorry, you talking to me?" He was like, "I will grant you any wish in exchange for one of your apples." And she's like, "Why would you do that for just a little apple?" He's like, "Don't you want to get away from your farm and start your own path in life?" And she was like, yeah, but how do you know that? He's like, "Well, that's what you want, isn't it?" And she's like, "Well, yeah." And he says, "Well, I can teach you how to get all those things and how to grant your own wishes." And she says, "Well, why would you do that for me?" Turns out he needs an apprentice, someone to help him around his shop. And in exchange for her help around the shop, he will teach her magic, basically. And she's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know you. But then right then, Catherine comes running up and she's all excited about something. And she's like, guess what? Guess what? She's like, I just found out the king himself has requested my apples to be served at a fancy dinner he's having. And she was all excited. This kind of got under Ingrid's skin. She turns to the vendor and she says, you got a deal. I gotta get away from these people. Now, back to Snow White. Why did the queen want to kill her? The huntsman tells her how the queen is jealous of Snow White, just like she was jealous of Queen Catherine. And he tells her a secret that his father, who had been the huntsman for the queen before him, had told him on his deathbed. He said he was just distraught with guilt about how the evil queen had had him poison her mother for Ingrid. And the huntsman had decided that he was not going to have the same fate as his father. He was going to take his family, hide them away, and then go face the queen and just accept his fate. He told her, please, you are the kingdom's only hope right now. Please, get away from her as fast as you can. Hide somewhere. He's like, quick. He's like, go, run into the woods. Just get out of here. And so she goes running off into the woods. No idea where she's going. Just running. Ingrid is with her master in the shop, and he's teaching her magic. He would teach her magic, for a few hours every day before the shop opened. And so they're doing that, and then they open up the shop, but then her master has to go somewhere. So he leaves, and she's tending to the shop by herself. But then evening comes, and he still hasn't gotten back, which wasn't usual. So she's in the shop by herself, and she's thinking to herself, why doesn't he really let me explore my talents the way she thinks he should? She knows that she's capable of so much more than he's allowing her to try. So she's wandering around the shop thinking this, and then she hears a voice say, because he fears the power you will build. And she's like, what? Who said that? Then she hears, within these walls, great power you'll find, along with the knowledge on how to leave this place behind. She's looking around the shop trying to find who's saying that. She gets angry. She's like, reveal yourself. And all the candles in the shop come on. She's so magically powerful. So Ingrid goes to the very back room at the shop where they keep items that have dark properties that need to be disposed of. But there's a process for this, so they can't get to them all at once. So they keep them in this room. She goes back there, and she's drawn to this bookcase that's back there. She just feels like she needs to go and inspect this bookcase. She pushes it away from the wall, and there's a big curtain hanging up. She pulls it down, and this beautiful mirror, big oval mirror made of ebony is on the wall. Then she hears a voice say, give yourself over to me and you will be the fairest in the land. It says, touch the glass and know all. He says, touch the glass and all shall be revealed. So she puts her hand on the glass and she could see the journey of the mirror. Figures were reciting incantations around it as the glass was formed and cooled. The cloaked figures were careful with it. They hid it away in a cave in the darkest recesses of the forest, visiting from time to time to care for the mirror and commune with it. I'll wait for this thumb to dry before I move on to the other finger so I don't bump it. So anyway, she's seeing this history of the mirror, and then at one point, one of these dark figures that had helped create it brings it to her master and was like, this thing is too powerful. You got to get rid of it. And her master's like, okay, don't worry. I'll put it in the back room and I'll get to it. It's so powerful and dangerous, but I'll get to it whenever. So anyway, she's got her hand on the mirror and she's seeing all these visions. But then she hears somebody come into the shop. She's assuming it's a customer, so she stops, comes out of her hypnotism or whatever, and goes out to see who it is. But it's not a customer. It's her sister, Catherine. And Catherine's all excited because she got an invitation to go to the palace as a guest for a party because the king has been so impressed with her apples. Ingrid is like, you got an invitation to the castle? I'm much more classier and royal-like than this little farm girl who likes apples. Now, back to Snow White, who's running through the woods trying to, I don't know, just run. She's just running. She doesn't know where she's running, but she just knows she needs to get far from the queen. So finally, after what felt like forever of just running, she comes to a clearing. She comes upon a tiny, cute little house. And she goes up and she knocks on the door, but no one answers. And she's like, well, I can't just keep wandering through the woods. Maybe I'll just go inside. And she goes in and the place is a mess. So she thinks, well, I'll clean up and I'll cook some dinner and maybe, they'll let me stay for the night and that will be their trade. And maybe, they'll let her stay a little bit longer till she can figure out what it is that she's gonna do. Now, after cleaning and cooking, she's very tired and she goes upstairs with the intention to continue cleaning, but there's a bed up there and it's so inviting because she's so tired from running around the woods. So she's just like, I'm just gonna lay down for a second. But of course, you know what happens when you say that. You immediately fall asleep. So she falls asleep, but then she is awakened to 7 figures standing over her. And they're like, who are you? What are you doing in our house? And she's like, I'm so sorry for the intrusion, but someone is trying to kill me. I, needed a place to hide in the woods. She's like, I made you dinner and I cleaned. And they're like, well, who's trying to kill you? She's like, the queen. They're like, the queen, the evil queen. She's trying to kill you. And you expect us to let you hide out here? They're like, yeah, that's a little too dangerous for us. If she's gonna kill us, if she knows that we hid you here. And she's like, but she doesn't know where I am. And they're like, well, who are you? And she's like, oh, I'm Snow White. And they're like, the princess? She's like, yeah. And they're like, well, she is the princess, so I guess that means we need to let her stay. She says, hey, listen, I know I'm putting you in a really bad position, but I am determined to get my kingdom back and bring back a prosperous time for the people. She's like, if you let me stay here and help me, she's like, I promise it'll pay off. And that convinces them. And she's like, but besides that, she thinks I'm dead. The huntsman is going to tell her that he killed me even though he didn't. They're like, okay. And then they start working on a plan to get Snow's kingdom back. Catherine has married the king. He liked her apples that much. And Ingrid was now living in her master's shop, sleeping on the floor. A few months after Catherine had gotten married, she showed up at Ingrid's shop and was like sad because she never got to see her sister anymore. And Ingrid was like, well, that's your fault. You left me. She's like, I didn't leave you. I got married. And she's like, I've begged you to come and live with us at the castle, but you refuse for some reason. And Ingrid's like, well, I don't need your charity. And Catherine's like, it's not charity. She's like, I can give you a job. She's like, I need a lady in waiting. She's like, why don't you do that? Oh man, I am rusty. These are not looking good. So yeah, she's asking her to be her lady in waiting. Ingrid doesn't want to do it because she feels like it's charity. But then she hears a voice in her head, which is actually a mirror, prodding her to go, because then you'll be in the palace and you'll have your sister's ear, which means you will have the king's ear, which means you can influence policy. So she tells her sister, fine, I'll go. She also figures that, Catherine and George will eventually fall out of love, as all couples do, and then maybe Ingrid can get the king for herself, and become queen. So a few years go by and Snow White is born, and the king and Catherine are more in love than ever. And Ingrid is now jealous of the relationship that Catherine has with her own baby. The mirror tells her, you know what must be done. But she can't even think of that right now. That what he's suggesting is just beyond her. She just can't even imagine. Back to Snow White's timeline. The little men that she was living with during the day would go off to work. It's been about a week now. And during the day, she would cook and clean and also try to come up with a plan on how to get her kingdom back. She decided she needed to find some allies and some sympathizers. And she figured that wouldn't be hard considering how badly the queen has treated everybody. So yeah, maybe if they could move quickly, they could stage a coup. But then she was thinking, well, how am I supposed to move around the kingdom without word getting out that she's still alive? So Bashful had heard about a magic tree in the forest that could make people shapeshift, and that it had some sort of magical sap that could do this. And maybe they could shapeshift her down super small and she could sneak into the castle or move around the city that way. They were like, cool, let's go find this tree. And they left the next morning. Bashful had said that the tree looked like it had a face, and Snow had remembered seeing something like that when she was running through the forest in the spooky haunted woods. So they went back there, and because it was spooky and dark and scary, they all held hands and formed a chain so they wouldn't lose each other. As they're creeping through the forest looking for this tree, they hear footsteps, and Snow White thinks it's the huntsman. Maybe he's changed his mind, or the queen found out and convinced him to come back and finish the job. So they all freak out. They start panicking and they lose each other's hands in the panic. And Snow White picks up a big branch and just starts swinging it. She's like, "You're not gonna get me, huntsman," she yells out. She feels the stick or whatever she's holding hit a body. And the person yells out, "Ow," and falls to the ground. And then she realizes, she's like, oh, that's not the huntsman. That didn't sound like the huntsman. So guess who it was? Henry. Okay, so wow, I have nails again. Oh my God. They don't look the best, but that's okay. Filing can fix a lot. And we are going to do that and finish this story in the next video. If you want to finish this story and see how my Christmas nails turn out, you should probably join our cult by hitting the subscribe button and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss the next video and see what happens with Snow and Henry and the evil queen in this twisted version of Snow White. And I will see you in the next video. Bye. And it is by Jen Calonita? Jen Calonita?